Hey everybody, Joe Lawyer here from Analog Man Cave. We have our next video in the series of how to be an awesome GM. Thank you very much for watching this much. I think this is the 37th video in that series. So anybody who's stuck along this stuck with us this long, I do appreciate it. And if you would please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, and share the video. It really helps. And if you want to be a channel member, you can start, help pay this stupid ass restream bill, 99 cents a month. And if once I hit 50 members, I'm going to do a live stream with you guys, everybody who's a member, once a month. Everybody get in there. We'll share a link out. We could join. We could talk amongst each other and all that sort of thing. So that'd be kind of fun. So help me get to 50 members, guys, if you could. But next video, here's what we're going to be talking about now. This is all about creating your physical world. Okay. So this is big. There's a lot to this. We're going to cover as much as we can, but obviously we can't do every single detail because it's an insane level of information. I'm going to give you some resources, talk about the process I'm going to use when I create my own, and you can extrapolate from there and use these resources, the same ones I'm going to use basically. So everything that we use to describe our world has to be in the world, our real world here in everyday life. All right, has to be in the world that you create. This means you have to determine basic stuff like how long is each year, how many days, how long is each day, how many hours, how many suns, how many moons, how many other planets in the system if they affect anything, how all that stuff affects the weather, winds, and tides. You probably want to design constellations and mythologies set up around the constellations. Regions of the world need to be designed along with the typical temperature ranges, the flora, the fauna, and trees and animals, that means, and the natural features like rivers and streams and forests. So all that stuff that's in them. Now, all of these things must make sense and then tie together. For example, unless your world resembles the mind of a madman, rivers can't flow downhill in some areas and uphill in others. The day can't be 15 hours long one week and 45 hours long the next. I guess they might in a fantasy world where anything could fucking happen, right? But things need to be consistent so the players can predict what will happen if they do certain basic things. They need to know that if they go to a high mountaintop, it's going to be snowy and cold. The air is going to be thin instead of the exact opposite. Things need to make sense. There needs to be some level of verisimilitude, or else it'll seem like you're making the entire world up as you go along, and nothing makes any sense. Now, it's beyond the scope of this video series and the book I'm writing to make you guys an expert in geology, ecology, astronomy, astrology, meteorology, and all the other E's that go into making a world from scratch. Suffice it to say that you need to do some studying. That's the fun part, at least to me. I mean, that's what I loved about D&D as a kid, is that every time I got into something, like I would run to the library, skateboard over to the library and read books on it and just read and read and read, check them out, read some more. And I love to learn like that. It really inspired me to, get a lot more knowledge than I would normally have had. So there's many resources out there that do a better job at explaining this at a high level and a detailed level than I could ever do. For example, I edited a book a couple years ago by Rob Connolly from Bat in the Attic fame. He's a friend of mine, and he published a book called How to Create a Fantasy Sandbox. Now, I did it for free. I did not receive commissions. I don't receive commissions. So just by way of full disclosure, I'm not pimping this book out to make money off it for myself. So, if you buy it, which I do recommend you buy it, you're not lining my pockets with any money. But in that book, he lays out all the things you're going to do in order to create a sandbox campaign world. He does it from a smaller region, but he even gives you an example of each thing that he does. And in the process, he does create a small sandbox campaign area. Now, you can use all the principles described in that book to design the world on a larger scale. Let me share this with you here. Where is the share button? Boom. All right, so this is it. How to make a fantasy sandbox. And you see there, edited by Joe the Lawyer. Look at that. My name is in glowing lights. And it won at least 6,000 or 7,000 awards for the greatest editing of any RPG book ever written by a human being. So that was pretty impressive, I thought, And there's Rob. Apparently. Fuck. The crazy thing is it looks just like him. It's amazing, even down to the little wisp of hair on top there. So yeah, he did a hell of a good job here. And you get an idea what he's talking about. So how to make a fantasy sandbox. He even gets into air circulation, monsoons, ocean currents, the history of the region, the campaign map, creatures in the human landscape, locales and naming geography, regional background and history, describing the geography, describing the layers of locales and ruins, creating the plots. I mean, it's a very, very detailed book. And then he gets into creating NPCs and monsters, NPC descriptions, rumors, wrapping it up, and a ton of different resources that he has here that he's listed. So take a look at his book. Take a look at the resources. It's not a big book. It's an excellent book, though. It's an excellent book. It's in digest size, as all things Rob are in digest size. But it's great, and great, great art in there. Tables, charts, processes, everything. It's really, really good. Big old phallic symbol there. Uh, but it's excellent. It's an excellent book. Let's see. So, getting back to it, another great resource is Matt Finch's Tome of World Building. The Kickstarter is just finishing up now. I backed it at the time of this video, which is March 24th, 2025. It's 7:56 p.m. as I'm recording this video. It's a massive 354-page book of tables and charts mostly that you can use to help develop everything within your world. It starts off with cosmic matters, moves to continents, regions, religions, politics, and the environment, counties, terrain, cities and settlements, legendary locations, mythic items and places, personalities, right down to monstrous leaders. Okay, so you can take a look at the Tome of World Building here, and I mean it is goddamn impressive. There's a table of contents for you guys. So if you want to sort of pause there, I'll do a slow scroll for you. But and each of these things are tables. I mean, you see every type of topic here has its own table. It's got to be hundreds of tables throughout this whole thing. It's a very, very impressive book with a great table of contents too, as well. So, I mean, it's a seriously great book. You should pick this up if you like random tables and rolling for random things. And all along the sides of the book too, he has these, I forget what he calls it, but it's sort of like subliminal messaging for random word combinations and things like that. A parakeet, the effect of assassination, a pact of swords, forests, the saint's key. All these things are sort of like subliminally helping inspire you as you go along. So it's really, really good. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of Matt Finch's books. He's the godfather of the OSR, obviously. So you really can't go wrong with his stuff, guys. All right. Another one, just as it's like an honorable mention, the Castles and Crusades Castle Keeper's Guide. It's an excellent book too. It goes into a lot of the same things that I'm talking about here, and I mean they do it right. The easiest thing for me to have done was to copy this form and structure, but they did it already. So if you could pick up a copy of the Castles and Crusades Castle Keeper's Guide, you're going to get a lot of good stuff. They start with the planetary stuff, how to design the world, days and years and this and that, tectonic plates and movements, chemical weathering, mechanical weathering, erosion. You get into all the different type of temperate zones, savannas, rainforests, steppes, all that sort of thing. Average rainfall, the different biomes. I had to look up what the hell a biome was in reading this book as I did a little research here. But usually, like a biome is a taiga, a tundra, temperate coniferous forest, deserts and xeric shrubland. I mean, these guys, they did it all out here. They did a good job. Different types of terrain, underground biomes, deserts, forests, lowlands, mountains and hills. I mean, definitions of various things, large bodies of water. It just weather. It's just so well done, and you can't go wrong by detailing all this. Look, they're the first people to do all the weather patterns. So Rob wasn't the first, but they don't have the charts of the weather here like Rob did. You know, the movements of the winds and the currents and all that stuff. So they do a great job in helping to give you ideas of what you need to do to design the world. Then they get into the age and the history. So it's excellent, though. It's excellent stuff. So those resources are without fail. You should at least look at those things. Okay. Now, that being said, I'm going to just tell you how I'm going about designing my own campaign world. And it's in the back of my head. I have a lot of ideas and I'm taking down a lot of notes. I'm at that stage now. First, I'm getting the RPG out. And then a couple of years after that, I will have had my world developed pretty fully. And I will put out a world which integrates my RPG. So the RPG, DMG, Monster Manual, GM guide, rather, I should say, not DMG, Monster Manual, the player's handbook and all that. That's going to be sort of out there for everybody to use in a generic sense. And then I'm going to take everything that I did there and put it into a fantasy world, much like Dolmen would and what Shadow Dark is doing now at the time of this video, at least. They're having their own thing. So I kind of like that idea. I'm just going to copy it. What the hell? Might as well, right? So first, what I'm going to do first, I know that I'm basing my own world on my 5th edition and my 2nd edition campaigns, which spanned altogether about 7 years in our real world time. Even though these events in that campaign happened in the Forgotten Realms, I'm just going to reskin it rather for my own place. I'm keeping the people, places, and events and putting them into my own little world. Besides, I changed so much and I broke the world several times over, and there's nothing left that would be identifiable except the maps. So that's the main thing I have to do, is create new maps. Now, since my campaign world is set about 1,000 years after the events of my campaign that I ran, I could change a lot without having to keep strictly to the past events. Also, since it's my game world, I could change up anything I damn well please. So first, for the maps, I'm going to draw it all out on paper. I'm going to get a rough idea where the continents are, fill in the big stuff like deserts and mountains and forests. So I have a lot to draw upon because I designed a lot of little areas for various campaigns I've run in the past, like Blood Island, as you've heard Greg bust my chops about. Where are you going to publish Blood Island? It's all going to be in here, bitch. The 5 Lakes game I ran, the Bronze Age campaign that I ran, all that stuff's going to make an appearance in my setting in some way. Why waste it? I put a lot of work and energy into it, right? Once I get it on paper, the rough strokes, I'm going to use Incarnate, which is an awesome map making program to make it all look pretty. I'm not someone who has like the tech skills and know-how to use the more complicated mapping software like Campaign Cartographer and Hexographer and all that. But Incarnate, that really hits my sweet spot. It gives you a nice mapping technology and capability without having to be a brain surgeon here. One thing with my map that I will not do is design it on a hex map grid. A lot of people, I think this goes back to the old stuff, the Wilderlands of High Fantasy and all that crap. And I think Greyhawk have hexes, I think. But they draw hexes on all their maps, and each hex is numbered. Then they describe what's in each hex. I don't like that approach. It's not the way I like to do it. It's not the way I like to read it. I'm going to draw the map with all the regions and describe what's in each region. I'm then going to use 1 inch equals X miles and for distance measurements on there. Then once I have all that, the big old map, I'm going to figure out the names of all the geographic locations, like, the Colmore Forest or whatever, and jot down notes for each area. I'll figure out how many days there are in a year, how many hours are in the day, and all that kind of stuff. I'll determine, how many suns and moons there are, some astrological stuff, jot down notes about various constellations and the types of legends and talk and things like that they might have inspired, and how they might be connected to the real past history of the world. Now, I'm heavily inspired by the works of Graham Hancock. There's a whole section of his books right back there. I don't know if you could see it, top shelf stuff, because he's a top shelf kind of guy, book wise. But I really like his stuff, so I'm going to draw upon a lot of what I learned from reading his books and listening to him speak. I actually met him once in Boston at a bookstore lecture. I even have a picture of him somewhere in my hard drive. I don't know if he'll remember me because I was in the front row because I got there so goddamn early. I greeted him when he came in, sitting in the front row, and he was doing a slideshow presentation. There's a shit ton of people. There must be a couple hundred people in there. It's a huge Barnes and Noble. And I remember I guess he had like a mic on a and it was broken or something. All he had was this little tiny microphone, but what it came from was broken off. It wouldn't clip or something right. So he's sitting there, complaining about it at the beginning. And I said, "Hey, Graham." He looks at me like, "Who the hell are you, buddy?" I said, "You got a pen?" I said, "Clip it onto the pen and you can hold it like it's a mic." So that's outside the box thinking. I'm like, yes, maybe he'll remember me. So anyway, my little Graham Hancock story. But back to this. So the maps and all that stuff. Guiding all of this mythology and all this kind of past stuff is the history of my past campaign, and guiding the maps that I have to draw. All that's a history of the past campaign. I know I'm going to have to create analogs for each major city and region from the past campaign, like Waterdeep and all that shit. And I know where they're all going to have to be in relative to each other. Once I have all those locations that are analogs from the past, I'm going to start filling in all the rest of the locations with various countries and city-states and other political areas. Believe it or not, although it was a world-spanning campaign, not many of the regions of the world were really fleshed out. They were kind of there to be stomped upon or broken or something like that, right? So I don't have too many regions that I have to make an analog for. So that's kind of nice. Now, like I said, I'm gonna once I get all this stuff from my old campaign, I'm gonna fill in all the rest of it with countries and city states and various political areas, and that's going to be influenced by the terrain they're located in. They're not. You can't just drop a major city in the middle of a desert, for example, right? For now, though, they're just going to be a series of names and some notes as to the type of country or city or whatever that the thing is. So a typical description, my notes at the beginning is just going to be name of the place with like info about population, the racial mix, the economy, the political structure, the military, the allies, the enemies, notable people, and maybe a brief write-up about the country. And the write-up would include the things like goals and motivations, a little bit about the history that can be fleshed out later, ideas about history more so, and a bit about the character of the people, broadly speaking, right? Like you could definitely talk about the character of Russians or the English or the French during a certain time period. What the country was all about, and so what made its people, what made them tick. What were the people like? The Americans at a time of the American Revolution. There's a certain vibe, a feel. So that's what I want to put in a little bit in there about those ideas. Next, I would design encounter tables, random encounter tables for each geographic region. For example, I wouldn't have one for forests and one for hills. When I say geographic region, I don't mean geographic type. I mean specific region. I'd have one for the Harbin Forest and one for the Jacalo Forest and one for the Comor Forest. And, so each one would have different, random encounters because each forest is different. They're not all the same. I would have different ones for each hilly region as well, different mountain regions. Everything would have its own, right? So depending on which region it was, you'd have 3 different deserts. You're going to have 3 different random encounter tables. Now, these encounter tables are going to be big. They're going to include both normal and monstrous inhabitants, as well as some interesting places like ruins. Most of the interesting ruins, though, and things like that, they're going to be designed later as the campaign goes on, using what I developed from writing up the last 1,000 years of history of the area, right? Now that I have the geography and the political regions fleshed out, now's when I'm going to get into the myths and legends of the various peoples in those regions. Some of the generic stuff I could do for now without having to write up the whole history of the last 1,000 years. But because I'm taking the world I ran for 7 years and plunging it into a 1,000-year dark age, a lot of knowledge will have been lost. There's going to be a lot of oral history, but not a lot of book learning, maybe, right? Things that have happened in my past campaign will become the basis of the new myths and the new legends. The PCs from that campaign reached the mid 20th level, I think, the 25th or something like that. And they didn't die. So I'm going to have to write. And what did they do for the next couple hundred years until things went to shit? How did things go to shit? What happened when things went to shit? But those PCs, they're going to be legends in their own right because they will have gained more power, more levels, just not within the campaign itself, that as played out by my brother and a couple other people. So once I have all those pieces in place, then I have to determine what happened in the last 1,000 years of history. Now, as I've said multiple times over and over again here, writing the history is my job as a GM. It's part of the setting that I have total control over. It is my railroad. I can't write the history of the future campaign in advance because that will be a railroad of the PCs. But I can railroad the world. I can railroad the regions. I can railroad the villages. And the PC's actions may affect that and change the course of that railroad. The train on the railroad, to stretch that analogy even further. But I'm going to write the history of the world and the regions of it in advance because that's my joy as a GM. So that is how I'm going to design my world, guys. Hope you can sort of extrapolate some principles and all that. So next up, I'm going to have 1,000 years of history, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to write it. But for the comments, please let me know. So I've given you 3 books here, 3 resources. What are your favorite books or resources that you guys use to help you design worlds? What do you like? What is there any book out there that you say, this is a great one? You gotta mention this. You gotta use this. I bought this on Amazon, or I caught this in a library, and it's really helped me in my own GMing on how to make worlds and all that. So let me know if you know of any, because I think that would help everybody. And I'll add it if you guys list some good ones and they're really great, and people keep saying it over and over again. I'll buy that shit and I'll add it to the book and the bibliography I'm going to have. So. All right. But next video is going to be all about the 1,000 years of history. Thank you. Please click like, subscribe, become a member. only 99 cents, I think, if you went on the most basic level of membership. Helps, pay the bills a little bit, pay for Restream and all the web page and all that kind of crap I got going on. Really appreciate that. And we'll talk to you tomorrow for the next 1,000 years of history, guys. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.